Clark, please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In your package, you had the regular council meeting minutes of September 22nd, 2020. Hope everybody reviewed them and are there any additions or corrections to them? Understand I approve that as presented. Report of the assistant town manager.
Good evening, members of council. I'll be filling in for Mr. Warner tonight while he's away tending to a family matter. I have a few items to report out, and then I'm going to relinquish the rest of my time to Chief Foreman for some remarks. In anticipation of your council work session on Saturday, October the 17th, you've been provided with a copy of an elected official's guide to government finance. This resource was created for elected leaders as a quick reference guide to local government operations and sound financial decision-making. So hopefully you'll make some time to review that before your discussions on Saturday. In light of recent cyber attacks at all levels of government, the town partnered with Managed Security Services on September the 1st of this year to protect our network against vulnerabilities. In a little over a month and a half, we have blocked a total of 199,584,000 events. And of those events, there were 1,319 total incidents and 6 high incidents. This is a real eye-opener, given we are such a small locality, but have been the target of that many events towards our network. So hopefully the precautions that we have in place will prevent us from getting into any kind of ransom situation when it comes to cyber attacks. So far, the town has spent $1,045,462 on the current landfill closure. The installation of the liner was affected by the rain last week, but work has resumed this week. So hopefully they will be finishing that project and coming to a close rather quickly. Fall cleanup went well. Our town crews picked up around 55 tons of waste on behalf of our customers. So if you see any of them, I'll give them a big thank you for picking up that much waste on their behalf. The construction of the west side gateway sign will be completed by the end of the week. The final step will be to landscape the area around the signs. And then the east side gateway sign is in the pre-construction phase. So once we get through that part, we anticipate that to be up rather quickly. To further improve the safety of our buildings, we are in the process of installing an in-duct air purifiers in all of our HVAC systems. We're doing this to help prevent the spread of any unclean air, and we anticipate getting CARES reimbursement funding on these purifier systems for the HVAC. And I'm sure that you noticed on the way in, we have embarked on our second annual Turn the Fountain Pink for the month of October for breast cancer awareness. Any donations that we receive will go to the local chapter of the American Cancer Society. And one final note, just as a reminder on tonight's meeting, it must be adjourned instead of dismissed for Saturday, October the 17th for the council work session. So if there are no questions on what I've reported out, I will relinquish the rest of my time to Chief Foreman.
I'll just comment, you got your east and your west backwards on the side.
Sorry about that.
And can we just cut back on the spam we're getting? We're doing well on getting the cyber attacks, and then we can get rid of the spam.
Well, we're working on that as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chief.
Good evening, council members and mayor. Thank you for the time. I wanted to come today to recognize some officers again for some of their accomplishments. The first officer I'd like to call up is Officer Meade, and Sergeant McCrickard with her. Sergeant McCrickard recognized Officer Meade's accomplishments, so I wanted her to be here with her while I tell you what her actions were. On August 7th, 2020, Officer Meade responded to a report of a suspicious male behind the Bedford County Admin Building. The male was walking around the cars in the parking lot. Upon arrival, Officer Meade was not able to locate the male, matching the description given. But she continued to search the area for the male and located him walking on West Main Street a short time later. Officer Meade's involvement in the community and knowing the citizens she serves and protects, she immediately realized that she did not recognize the male to be a citizen of the town. Officer Meade continued her investigation and identified the young male and found out he was from Mississippi and he was driving through Virginia taking pictures of scenery. Officer Meade noticed the male was not wearing shoes and showed signs of distress and confusion. She continued showing respect and concern while speaking with the male and listening to how he'd lost his camera, his phone, and his vehicle had been towed because it ran out of gas and didn't have any money. Officer Meade began searching for resources to assist the male in getting him back home. She was able to make contact with his mother by phone, and once his mother spoke with him, she advised Officer Meade that he did not sound like himself. The mother said that she was in Mississippi and it would take her a while to get to Bedford, but she would be here as soon as possible to pick up her son. Officer Meade contacted the father, who was in Tennessee, and he was unable to help at the moment. But the father, who stated his son did not sound right. Due to both parents' concerns for his condition, Officer Meade transported the male to the hospital, who was checked by the hospital. While there, Officer Meade continued to contact his family members to see if anyone would be closer than his mother. While waiting for people to call back, she continued to reach out to resources in the community and contacted social services. After several failed attempts due to him not meeting criteria, Officer Meade was able to speak with a family member and reserve a room at a local hotel for him, and his mother was able to come and pick him up. Officer Meade's determination, innovation, and respect towards this male, because of this, she was able to assist a concerned family and have a safe outcome for this young man who was in crisis. But with that also, if he would have been left in town, he possibly could have been committing crimes because he was in a desperate situation. So she kept the citizens of the town safe by continuing and doing a good job with what she did. Officer Meade continues to show her character over compromise and represent the town of Bedford with her positive attitude and integrity. Thank you for your efforts with this, Officer Meade. Here's one of our coins for you.
John, you need any help?
Every year, Mothers Against Drunk Driving recognizes one of our officers for their efforts in keeping our roads safe. This year, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we weren't able to have a banquet for him and recognize him in a formal setting. Because of this, I wanted to call Officer Brook up and recognize him for his efforts in ending impaired driving and keeping the citizens safe while in the town. Officer Brook spends many extra hours of his time doing extra enforcement for impaired drivers. He was arrested the most DUIs, driver under influence arrests within the town of Bedford this year. So I wanted to recognize him for his outstanding service to end impaired driving in Bedford. This says Virginia, but I'd say in Bedford. Thank you. You're welcome.
movie star too.
Hill. All right, now I want to call a group up, and all of them couldn't be here, but we'll call the ones up. A while back, you passed the career progression program. We had our first group of officers, and I wanted to bring the first group that were able to meet the achievements up today. They had to do a physical agility test. They had to have a minimum amount of training, a minimum amount of community involvement. They had to score a certain score on their firearms, so they had to show firearms proficiency, and they had to have a positive review for the past 6 months from their supervisor. So it went through all those steps, and we're going to recognize, there were 6 of them, so the ones that are here can come up. We had Investigator Blackford, Officer Brooks, Officer Lawhorn, Officer George, and Officer Peltier. And what we've done for them is we've got some insignia for their collars to show the achievement that they, so they can wear it showing that they've made the achievement of the PO1.
Also, I ask my mom, and
Yes, that's fine.
You will too, I need to get you all to get out of it. Similar award.
Well, they're being recognized for their actions or for their achievements in their career. I will.
Yes.
Guys, look like lieutenants up here.
It's PFC rank for Army.
locks them in.
Well, that was all I had this evening. I just wanted to recognize these officers for their hard work and dedication to the department and to the town. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
That concludes the town manager's report.
Ms. Anderson, are there any people signed up for appearance before council? Okay. Council comments. Start with Mr. Stanley.
I have none.
Sean. Mr. Sly.
Nothing.
Mr. Lanston.
Only thing I can say is I'm proud of our police department. Keep on themselves. I really appreciate your work.
Same thing as Mr. Johansson said, the police department does an excellent job all the time.
I appreciate all the professionalism and the hard work you all put in for our community. It doesn't go unnoticed, and we greatly appreciate it.
And I'll second that and move further on to say that Brian and I was in a meeting here about a month ago where Todd ran a thing on some crime prevention initiatives and community policing. And, you know, I have 31 years experience, but it was a different time and different day back in those days. But he's doing an excellent job in the community. And his wife and girls. Council committees. I don't think we had any.
Yeah, we did. The, public safety committee.
Okay.
We had a public safety committee, on September the 29th, we, discussed the urban archery. We went in there and changed some of the things in the ordinance. We're going to vote on the ordinance later on tonight.
Revisions to the agenda. Oh, were you gonna say something?
No, I said, was it something he said? He got up and left. There you go.
You run off that crab, Stan.
He deserves it.
There are no revisions to the agenda. Public hearings, CARES Act funding, Ms. James.
Notice is hereby given of the public hearing to be held by Town Council at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, October the 13th, 2020, at the Town Municipal Building, Council Hall, 215 East Main Street. The purpose for this public hearing is as follows. Receive public input regarding the town's intended use of CARES Act funding by the authority of Town Council of the Town of Bedford. This was published on September the 30th, 2020 in the newspaper.
Public hearing is open regarding the CARES Act funding.
Good evening, members of council. My name is Bruce Hartwick. I reside at 418 West Franklin Street. It's not only the smart thing to do, but also the right thing to do is to vote to accept the CARES Act funding. Could help more businesses in town stay afloat through this pandemic. We may even be able to use some of that to even help our first responders, our police officers and firefighters. So please vote to accept and approve the CARES Act funding. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak on the topic of the CARES Act? Public hearing is closed. Consent agenda, request to block streets for YMCA's annual Pizza Lotta Christmas Classic Foot Race, Bedford Area YMCA.
The Bedford Area YMCA is requesting permission to hold the 41st YMCA Annual Peaks of Otter Christmas Classic Foot Race on Saturday, December the 5th, 2020, and to block the following streets. The 5K course will start at the Bedford Baptist Church, starting at the exit, enter across Oakwood Street and turn left, then continue on Oakwood, turn right on Longwood, then right onto Hampton Ridge. Left turn on Locust Street, then left onto Elm Street, right turn back on Longwood Avenue, turn right into Old Bedford Middle School parking lot, across parking lot to then turn right onto Peak Street, right onto Whitfield Drive, right onto Oakwood Street, cross over to Oakwood Street and back into the exit of the Bedford Baptist Church. They are also requesting the use of Newton Circle as part of the Kids Fun Run 1 mile. They are requesting that the right lane of traffic be closed off using cones beginning at Longwood Baptist Church and continuing to Elm Street on Longwood. This will provide our participants with an extra margin of safety on Longwood Street. This road will need to be coned off for the inside lane to be used for participants from 7:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. The race start time will remain the same in years past, 8:30 a.m., with approximately 500 runners participating. A letter will be sent to the residents of that area. The Town Council is requested to approve the closing of the above streets for the 41st YMCA Annual Peaks of Otter Christmas Classic Foot Race from 7:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. on December 5th, 2020.
Okay, we have this request for block streets at YMCA's annual foot
So
race.
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, and I'll be the first to speak about the discussion. I don't see an application where a fee was paid, Ms. James, for this. Are you aware if it was?
I am not aware that a fee was collected.
Mr. Janet Longhorn, you're in a galley, you handle that. Have you received anything like that? We have a policy for that.
Yes, sir.
Couple other quick questions. Running through the middle school parking lot, in the middle of the construction kind of demolition up there, do you know, has the Y reached out to Dave and gotten his permission to do that?
I do not know if they had reached out to Dave McCormick at all, but we can follow up with them and see.
And then the only other thing too, in the past, have they announced a rain date? Do we normally, I think they normally, they don't announce a rain date? Okay, all right, that's fine. So, all right, no problem.
I would say I like the route, but they gotta follow procedure.
Yeah.
So, I'd move and table it until we get the appropriate.
Either that, or we could potentially amend the motion to take into effect these two kind of things that they need to do the paperwork, pay the fee, and get Mr. McCormick's approval to, use the middle school property as part of the course. And that way we don't have to bring it back.
Sound fine.
Just
We'll be
amend the
meeting-
motion.
So
Just amend the
Just amend.
motion. Go ahead.
I'll amend the motion to approve the road closure with two conditions. They they fill out the paperwork, pay the fee, and they get approval from Dave to use the middle school parking lot as part of their course.
We will make sure that happens.
That's an amended motion then.
Have a motion and amended motion.
I'll second the, we need a second on that.
Yeah, it is.
Roll call.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mr. Johannesson?
Aye.
Mr. Schley?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mayor Rush?
Aye.
Amended motion passes with 7 ayes.
Okay. Ordinance amending provisions of town code dealing with required cutting of grass, weeds, etc., unlawful accumulations of refuge and maintenance of areas between public sidewalks and street third lines. Any changes?
Did you not want to do the CARES Act funding?
Oh, I'll run right by.
Okay.
I'm looking at the big numbers.
Okay. As part of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act passed by Congress in March of 2020, the town of Bedford is eligible for direct funding for qualified activities, with Bedford County serving as the local fiduciary agent. The town has already received reimbursement for expenses related to the purchase of personal protective equipment and the town's direct assistance to businesses in the form of assistance grants. In consultation with staff, the Finance Committee met on September the 22nd, 2020, and recommended that the town make use of CARES Act funding in an effort to mitigate the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic in the following manners: continued purchase of personal protective equipment, disinfection of public areas and facilities, improvement of telework and meeting capabilities, distance learning objectives, small business and nonprofit assistance programs, citizen assistance programs, and other COVID-19 related expenditures, including but not limited to hazard pay for town employees, and purchase of equipment, materials, and infrastructure related to maintain continuity of government services. Town Council is requested to approve the recommendation of the Finance Committee for the use of CARES Act funding allocated to the town of Bedford.
We'll have a motion.
Second.
Discussion.
I read your, the finance committee minutes. I had some questions as far as the hazard pay. As far as the town employees, have there been employees that have been working remotely?
Yes, sir. We have a handful of employees that did work remotely during the thrust of the pandemic.
But they're no longer?
No, everyone is back at work now, unless they have a positive test or they're quarantined for some reason associated with that.
I mean, I know it's hard to pick and choose, but if someone just worked remotely, I don't know that they were at risk.
Well, the way it was put to me was that we're all at risk right now, no matter what period of the pandemic
Right,
it
but
is.
I could appear remotely right now if I wanted to. I choose to be here.
Okay.
No one is currently.
No one's currently working from home, yes.
Are we included in this?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to at least go over the things we talked about in finance. I know people hopefully read the things, but to get them on the record, I would kind of like to talk about the hazard pay and
The stipends.
vehicles and
Yeah.
and have a discussion about that, because there was some discussion on some items, even in finance committee on, you know.
I mean, I respect you guys' opinions and decisions, but.
Yeah, you need to know the information, the public needs to know the information, and we just.
I actually included all those expenditures in your last finance committee, your last financial report that was sent to all of council. But I think the two big hot topics I brought those with me to redistribute to council if you would like to look at that and actually discuss specifics of what you are wanting to spend this CARES Act money on. Now, I do trust that the personal equipment, the PPE equipment and the cleaning supplies and things like that, you would trust staff to make a decision on that. But these big ticket items, if you'd like, I can pass those out of what I included in your financial report from the last time.
I'd like a report. Did you say these were sent to us? Because it wasn't in my packet.
In your last finance packet. There's in each of the packets.
I mean, as far as us being included, I don't feel comfortable with that for me. I'll wait mine.
That was some of the heartburn I had in finance committee, that, you know, to include council members and the Economic Development Authority and Redevelopment Housing Authority. That was kind of.
Mr. Mayor, if you could continue passing those documents along.
You know, so I mean, yeah, we settled on a number and included everything as kind of a recommendation up to, knowing that everybody was gonna have to approve this, I think.
That's correct.
So,
Yeah, I'm with Darren and Tim. I'm not real comfortable.
Mr. Mayor, there's another.
With receiving any kind of hazard pay for what we do.
It's the memo for public safety.
was there two there, Stacy, in that pack?
I mean, the police, yes, no question.
And what DW's folks do, you know.
Right. I mean,
They're out there every day, and
Right.
they really,
Right.
I don't see what you're talking about.
He's got it.
they're having to pick up the trash and do whatever else they do. I
We have.
thoroughly think that they're deserving, so, police and the firemen too, for that matter. I mean, they could easily become involved in this thing, so.
I had met, kind of conversation with Jamie's Friday.
Yes, sir. I believe that was the day.
And you had indicated that the numbers, which we have them tonight, would be at the next meeting, but now we have them tonight.
I went ahead and did them early for you in case you needed them.
And you said we would talk about the numbers at the next meeting, and then we'll talk about them tonight, but I'd like council time to give them time to digest this, or are you willing to move on now?
I mean, I think we certainly can go ahead and just at least discuss it tonight.
I think your action item, though, is not to pinpoint your expenditures, but that you're accepting the use of that funding on any particular expenditures we have that is
So we're gonna have
allowable.
a separate vote for what specifically these items?
That was the intent.
For the certain amount.
That was the intent,
Okay.
for you
Yeah,
to be
right.
provided with itemized lists
Right.
of what we would be requesting outside of the routine requests that we.
Tonight, we're just accepting the CARES money.
That was the intent.
Yes.
Okay.
I would.
Mr. Berry, as far as the action on this, it says for use of CARES Act funding allocated to the town of Bedford to approve the recommendations of the finance committee. To me, that means the specifics.
Well, you could just say, to accept their recommendation
Okay.
to receive the money,
If that's what the motion is out there, I just want to be clear that that's the
or
motion.
you can clarify.
Right. Got it.
But the motion does clarify, doesn't it?
Yes, sir, I think it does.
Okay. The motion is to accept the money. True?
But we don't.
For these
What's
specific,
the number of the?
For the
not
categories
correct,
allotted under the
categories.
CARES Act,
Yes.
yes, but then we do have discretion
Correct.
within the CARES Act. That's,
Two-
yeah.
but we're, and I do want to, are we having a separate public on that, or is that's what I'm.
As far as the allotment and how much,
Are you having a
Full-time.
separate public hearing for that, or are we having a public hearing tonight?
You are having a public hearing to accept the funding and disperse the funding via the 7 categories that you have been given. Then, later on, you will have a vote on these top areas that could be as an allowable expense, how you would want that spent. Later on, we will submit an action form to be able to disperse the funding how you have discussed later on. But this action form is just to accept spending them in the categories that are listed in this action form.
When does the decision have to be made as to specifics?
We have to have funding spent before the last day of December. So we have some,
Spent or a decision made on what to spend? Because like the cars wouldn't be purchased till next year probably.
we actually have found some cars available that we could go ahead and
The
purchase.
purchase orders would have to be made before the end of the year.
That's correct.
yeah.
Well, my only thing is, I think at some point, we need to talk about and make the public aware of what we're considering spending our CARES funding on. The hazard pay, the police vehicles, and give them a chance, to respond to, well, it's a public hearing, public comment.
Right.
Talk to me on the street, whatever, I think.
Well, like the 6 cars versus 3.
Right.
I don't know. If they need 6, sure. I don't know. I don't have enough.
Yeah, and we need to explain, and Todd, we all need to explain that of what the council, why we came up with what we came up with in finance committee, I think. Whether that's tonight or,
Can you explain?
yeah, I can explain why we chose 3 instead of 6.
Not just that, but the other, because that's what, in committee, we had these discussions.
We did.
And in the committee, we made those recommendations.
So you.
Which, no, hold on, it's public knowledge for those records, and I don't have an issue having that. I'm just, there's conflicting within the committee on what we came out of.
I don't think so.
He suggested that he goes along with you of not funding it for council.
It was a recommendation that came out of the committee.
But our recommendation was to include part of that.
No,
So that's why I just don't want the confusion. There was, all I've said before is, I hate relitigating things over and over and over. I think council has a responsibility to listen to the arguments.
Right.
But if we're gonna have a committee meeting, let's have a committee meeting and then make a recommendation. Let's not have a committee meeting, make a recommendation, and then go back on our recommendation once we get in front.
Well, the minutes reflect that I had opposed paying council.
After discussion, the committee agreed to the following. Full-time employees, 1,500, part-time employees, 1,000, everyone else, 750. And
Right.
part of that, everyone else, was the spreadsheet that was given.
And that's the recommendation. That doesn't mean none of us have to agree with the recommendation.
I agree with that. I don't wanna, there's some of us that are on 3 or 4 committees,
Right.
right? And if every time we go on a committee, we discuss something that come out of it, if you're not on that committee, I agree, you have your opinion, you should, we shouldn't waste time going in committee if we're not gonna come out of committee with a consensus.
But I just think the 4 council members that weren't in that committee should hear the debate that we had in that committee.
Yep.
And we should have that debate again on this dais for them, and they should be able to participate in that debate. And
I thought that was what the agreement was when we came out of that thing, that we would have a discussion.
But it was.
it was.
We was gonna present the proposal that we came out of the committee.
Right.
To council. And now you've got it in front of but not everybody, because only the committee can address things in the committee, other council members.
So how do you want- how
I
do you
just want the
handle it?
committee to be consistent, that's all I'm asking.
No, but the committee was, I think.
Yeah,
Your
it's pretty
recommendations there.
consistent.
We're just spouting that we don't, some of us are not real comfortable with getting hazard pay.
I agree with that, and that's why I said, that council, that's the reason it goes in front of council.
Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to get out of this is, we have, what's the total amount?
The total amount?
The total amount of CARES Act funding.
The first allotment was $545,000, and we're anticipating a second allotment. I'm waiting for a directive from the county on that of an additional $545,000.
Right, so close to $1 million, right?
Correct.
So far, out of that, we were reimbursed,
$302,000.
and that was for what we had previously
That
taken
is
action
correct.
on, which none of us
Well-
were expecting. We took that action with different funding. The CARES
Correct.
Act wasn't even considered.
That included your business grants and
Correct.
any type of
Right.
salary loss as a result of positive cases.
And I don't think anybody's questioning.
So with that, no, but it's, what I'm saying, I guess what I'm trying to get to is, I agree with everybody, we should have this discussion. What I'm saying is, there's a couple of things. One is, with the total employee, and that's everyone included, including firefighters, by the way. It's everyone included, the total was $334,181.25.
That's what tax is included as well.
That's everything, that's right.
That's
And
correct.
then you have the police on top of that. And the discussion we had in our meeting was, CARES Act funding is for the current situation that we're in.
Correct.
So it's kind of counterintuitive to wait till December to decide on whether the chief gets 3 cars when the current issue we have is current.
Correct. Keeping an officer in an individual car away
Correct. The whole
from the
purpose
other
for
officers
extra
do
cars
not
was to
use.
get the protection that he needed now.
That's correct.
So I'm willing to have that conversation. I just don't want to keep, I guess what I'm saying, I'd rather have the conversation sooner than later. That's all.
I'm ready to have the conversation tonight.
I agree.
To discuss it and unless people need more time,
I just want to be consistent, so there's going to be money left over still past that. So are we going to come back and have another public for any more expenditures down the road? That's where I'm at. I just want to be consistent throughout the whole process.
So what we use, or don't use, is going back.
Yes. sir.
Correct.
Yes, sir. Or the county will reallocate it and use it.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Do you have any other, projects or anything that possibly you could use CARE money on down the road somewhere?
Well, those fundings are for current issues related to CARES, the COVID, mitigating the COVID-19. So, there are some projects that we could use that funding on that are current projects, but we wouldn't save that money to use projects for years out, so,
it's gotta be spent by the end of the year.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we're spending millions on it.
yes.
The number I've come up with, was $803,773 based on the numbers here.
That's what we spent on the business grant and the
That's
PPE
covered
and cleaning.
Right, with the 302,000,
And the
correct.
police cars.
Yes.
So, to me, really, it's just what we've already spent on the business grant and the PPE and cleaning, we don't need to really, I don't think anybody needs to discuss that, we've already, I wouldn't think, but
Correct.
it's the hazard pay and the,
Police call.
And there are some additional items coming through, like the HVAC purifier that we're using for the buildings and additional cleaning items, as well as some positive cases reimbursement for their salaries as well. So those are some, but they're not going to amount to a great deal.
yeah, and, so what does everybody want to do?
If I'm gonna vote on specifics right now, unless I'm missing something, I see pay and I see the police department. I don't see anything about the HVAC system here, unless I've missed it.
There's nothing there.
Okay, and as far as PPE,
Those invoices have not processed yet. We're
I guess I
currently
can't
in the
vote on
project.
something when I don't know what I'm voting on.
Okay, well, we can come back and I can give you an itemized spreadsheet of everything that's going to be included. I've already provided council with an itemized spreadsheet that entailed the $302,342 that we got previously reimbursed on. So you guys already have that, but I can do another spreadsheet that has all of our PPE that we are currently operating with, our HVAC system, and these two high dollar items that you're discussing tonight, if that would make council more comfortable to have a spreadsheet in front of them.
I mean, I understand Brian's point about we can't wait till December, I get that. I mean, I'd be a little more comfortable with a little more time, I'm not saying put this off forever, I get it. But a little more clarity, and you guys may be right, I may end up voting for everything you guys said, except my bonus, I can't take that. And I don't wanna hang the whole thing up on that, but I'll donate it if you guys voted. I can't do that. I could have appeared by screen every time. I chose to be here. So, other than that, again, I'm not disrespecting what you guys did. You guys know what you're doing. You've been at this a while, and I respect that. I just need to know more.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with, actually, I'm in agreement with you. Maybe it's been misconstrued that I don't think council should have their, that's not what I'm saying. What I was saying is, in committee, when we come up with a consensus, I'd like the committee to stick with
Come here as a consensus.
not to, well, I had heartburn, so I'm not gonna, I don't wanna go back and forth with that. So, I think if I'm misconstruing this, please correct me, Ms. James, but to avoid a lot of the confusion, I think what staff was asking us to do is to vote on the parameters of how the money can be spent.
Yeah.
Then staff will come to us and say, okay, this is what our expenditures are, yay or nay. And we can, at that point, say, I don't want council to get paid, but this can get paid.
Doesn't the CARES Act require that it fit into those parameters?
Correct, yeah.
Well, and I think you have covered that, because I specifically asked you, we're following the county's recommendations, because my concern was, if we misspent it,
Yes, sir.
who would come back on to reimburse? It would not be us.
Yes, sir. We will not do anything that the county hasn't already approved for us to do.
So
So
me
they have
personally,
agreed.
I would rather us vote on this motion, which is the parameters.
Correct.
And then staff can come to us next meeting. The reason I brought up the public hearing is I would rather we're having the public hearing on what the parameters are.
Correct.
Then council can say yay or nay on what the expenditures are.
Correct.
But are we gonna have a public hearing on
No,
every expenditure?
the public hearing is not a requirement to accept this funding, but in council's generosity of having full disclosure for their constituents, they had a public hearing. We are one of very few localities that actually had a public hearing on that funding.
I expressed that I wanted a public hearing because it's tax dollars.
Yeah.
That is
I
correct.
think we put the cart before the horse, maybe, I don't know.
So basically, we're just voting on accepting the CARES money. We, as a council, can later do the deep dive as to how much stipend COVID hazard pay the employees are going to get.
And where to put it.
So, yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's
I agree
probably
with
not an
Brian, though.
issue
We should
tonight.
probably set something amongst us to where we're not dragging our feet
Right.
on that decision.
No, it needs to be done next meeting, if that's, I mean, in my opinion, like I said, I'm willing to have the discussion
Quick.
tonight, but to give you guys that are first seeing this for the first time, more time, I mean, I'm okay with that too, but.
I mean, I was actually in the finance committee meeting when this was discussed, so I'm familiar with it, so I know what was recommended.
Well, prior to the next meeting, we do have a finance committee meeting if anyone wants to attend, and I'll include any information in your finance packet regarding any anticipated expenditures on the COVID funding.
Well, I
On the
think the
CARES Act.
finance committee has made the recommendation. Other council members just need to look and see if they have heartburn on what we've recommended, because I think this is new to some of them. Am I correct? So,
I do think it would be good to have a discussion on that.
yes.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
let's do that the next meeting. And you have the paperwork paperwork in order to study, and if you have questions, you can go to the finance committee member or Ms. James.
Okay.
We can't take action on that.
You haven't, you
We
haven't.
can take action on the public.
What is the wording of the motion, just to make sure that it's not accepting the recommendation of the finance committee, that's what.
The language here says accepting the recommendation.
Right.
Mr. Berry, do we need to change the language of the motion, or?
I think you probably do. That's your,
So move to amend, we would say,
would you recommend that they adopt the parameters?
That's what I thought the recommendation was the parameters, not specific items associated with what you're spending the money on. The recommendation was the parameters by which you will do your spending towards, so that's how I read the action
I
plan.
thought this recommendation had specifics of what the finance committee said. And you're
That's the way I read
Yeah,
the
the way
action
it's
item.
worded,
Yeah.
the presentation is what you're stating, but the action requested states something different.
Different, that's where.
Okay,
So
well,
we just
we,
need to amend the.
we can take the finance committee out of there and the recommendation on the parameters of the
To
funding.
move sample, Mr. Berry, we'd have to move to amend the motion to reflect that we're voting to approve the funding of the CARES Act and the parameters established by the CARES Act.
That's fine.
There you go.
There's my motion.
That is-
Do I have to repeat that?
That's simple.
Second.
I'll,
I'll second.
somebody second.
Yeah.
Let's go on.
You got that, Julie?
Yeah, yes, sir. We do.
Roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mr. Johannesson?
Aye.
Mr. Schley?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mayor Rush?
Aye.
All right, amended motion carries with 7 ayes.
Next is the ordinance amending the provisions of the town code dealing with regard to cutting grass, weeds, accepting unlawful accumulations of refuse, maintenance of areas between public sidewalks and street curb lines.
Okay. Gary MacGyver, the town code official, has reported to the town manager that the existing town code provisions dealing with required cutting of grass and weeds on town land and premises, accumulation of garbage and trash, and the maintenance of areas between town sidewalks and the curb line of town streets are costly, inefficient, and time-consuming. Mr. MacGyver and the town attorney have prepared proposed amendments to the town code, making revisions to simplify and streamline the process for more consistent, efficient, and cost-effective enforcement in accordance with current state statutes and with administrative provisions enacted by other urban localities in the area. These include revisions that allow notifications of violations by posting and personal service or first-class mail rather than certified mail, which is time-consuming and inefficient when recipients decline to accept certified notices. Included also is a provision now found in state legislatures requiring only one written notice per growing season for failure to cut brush and grass per growing season between March 1st and October the 31st, provided that the property is properly posted for each subsequent violation after personal services or regular meeting notices have been made for the first violation. Mr. MacGyver also has designed and drafted a form to be used as a violation notice for notification of violations of the proposed amended ordinance. This form will be adopted administratively for enforcement of the new regulations. The proposed ordinance has been posted for 1 week as required by town code. Town council is requested to adopt the ordinance reenacting sections 26-85, 26-86, 46-35, and 50-7 of the town code.
Is there a motion?
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Black?
I'm just kind of curious, how tall can I let my grass get before I have to cut it? like a foot?
It's 10 inches in this.
10 inches, okay. Yeah.
Roll call.
Mr. Johansson?
Aye.
Mr. Schley?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Haley? Mayor Rush?
Aye.
Motion passes with 7 ayes.
Finally, change of ordinance hunting within town limits with bows, arrows, crossbows.
The Public Safety Committee of the Town Council met with the Chief of Police Todd Foreman and the Town Attorney Will Berry to review the ordinance dealing with hunting with bows and arrows and with crossbows, Town Code Section 30-82.1. A citizen had contacted Councilman Black requesting an explanation of the reasons for differences in the ordinances dealing with hunting with firearms, shotguns, and those dealing with hunting with archery. The committee reviewed the regulations and directed the chief to make the following changes to the provisions more consistent with each other and with the state code and game and inland fishery regulations. Recommended changes include: A, removing the existing prohibition upon hunting for bucks. Originally, this was based upon the idea that getting rid of does would result in fewer bucks. This had resulted in fewer hunters than would be the case if bucks also could be hunted. B, there was no reason to require bow hunting only from tree stands. C, there was no reason not to require annual renewal of urban archery permits when 5-year permits were allowed. And D, the archery deer season will be extended from the first Saturday in October to the 31st day of March rather than the first Saturday in January. These changes should promote more hunting to reduce the growing number of deer in the town. The police chief and the town attorney have drafted the ordinance with proposed changes. The ordinance has been posted for 1 week as required by town code. Town council is requested to adopt the ordinance reenacting section 30-82.1 of the Code of Town of Bedford with the changes proposed by the chief of police.
No motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the change in the ordinance and stuff.
Second.
Oh,
Stacy, okay. Any discussion?
I just want to thank you, the Public Safety Committee and Chief Foreman. Like I said, I talked to a citizen about this, and y'all responded quickly, and I think all the changes were made that were addressed as a concern of the citizen, and I appreciate it.
We came to a consensus.
A recommendation.
Yep, we all agree.
Public safety, so it was great. Okay, roll call.
Mr. Schley?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Haley? Mr. Johansson?
Aye.
Mayor Rush?
Aye.
Motion passes with 7 ayes.
Be no further business tonight. We're adjourned. Oh, you get something?
No, I was just going to remind you to adjourn.
I'm gonna.
Keep him honest.
For a council work session on October the 17th, which will be here instead of at Liberty Lake due to social distancing. And it'll be at 8:30 for a light breakfast. It begins at 9. And at 9 o'clock, Mr. Berry will talk to us about FOIA for 30 minutes, not 31. And then we're going to move into why the work session is going on.